You are born into a place where fear is treated like weather, constant, unavoidable, and never questioned. Long before anyone explains right or wrong, your body learns what happens when things go wrong. You don't remember your first lesson clearly. No one does. You only remember the silence afterward. The land is vast, empty, and merciless. The sky feels heavy, as if it's watching. Adults tell you this is a holy place, but holiness here doesn't feel warm. It feels sharp. Everything that keeps you alive, water, food, shelter, comes from strict routines that cannot be broken. Miss a step, and people notice. Not immediately. Later. Your earliest memory of punishment doesn't happen to you. That's important. It happens to someone else, so you can learn without bleeding. A child older than you speaks at the wrong moment during a morning chant. Just one syllable out of place. The chant stops. Everyone freezes, no shouting, no anger. The adults exchange looks you don't understand yet. The child is taken away quietly. By evening, their mat is gone. By morning, no one says their name. You learn the rule without it ever being spoken. Mistakes don't need explanations. Daily life looks ordinary from a distance. People work, eat, pray, sleep. But under that routine is constant tension. You notice how adults pause before answering simple questions, how they glance toward doorways before speaking, how laughter never lasts too long. Joy is allowed, but only briefly, like breathing, before being submerged again. You are taught obedience as protection. Follow the rhythm, they say. The rituals keep us safe. Safe from what? You never ask. Asking implies doubt, and doubt attracts attention. Attention is dangerous. At night, you hear things you're not supposed to hear. Low chanting that doesn't sound like prayer. Movements that don't match any ceremony you've been taught. You learn to lie still and pretend you're asleep. Even as a child, you understand that witnessing something is already risky. Remembering it is worse. There are objects in the village that feel wrong. You don't know why. A carved figure turned toward the wall. A bundle wrapped in cloth no one touches. A room everyone avoids unless summoned. You're told they're sacred. Sacred here means untouchable. It also means blame will find you if something goes wrong. One day, an animal dies during a ritual meant to ensure good harvests. The elders say it's an omen. Someone must have disrupted the balance. The animal is not blamed. A person is. You watch as an adult you've known your whole life is singled out. Not beaten, not killed, just removed. Their family stops receiving help. Their food portions shrink. Within weeks they leave. You don't see where they go. You're told not to worry. The ritual worked. This is when you understand something crucial. Punishment here is not dramatic. It's surgical, clean, designed to erase rather than destroy. Erasure is more effective. It leaves fewer questions behind. As a child, you internalize this without realizing it. You become careful. You memorize patterns. You notice which actions bring approval and which bring tension. You learn that survival isn't about strength or intelligence. It's about predictability. You are brought to your first hidden gathering before you're ready. You stand at the edge, told to remain silent. Someone else is placed in the center. They are accused of carrying impurity. No evidence is presented. Evidence isn't required. The ritual proceeds anyway. Words are spoken that feel heavy, final. The person doesn't resist. Resistance would make things worse, for them and for everyone connected to them. When it ends, the person is still alive. That's the cruelest part. They are alive but marked, watched, slowly isolated. You understand then that death would be simpler. Death ends things. What happens here does not. You go home afterward and eat dinner. No one mentions what happened. The adults talk about weather and work. You realize that silence is part of the ritual too. Forgetting is enforced collectively. Memory itself is dangerous. From that point on, fear becomes structured. It has rules. It has timing. It has designated victims. The rituals are not random acts of cruelty. They are systematic. They choose targets carefully, people who are slightly different, slightly isolated, slightly inconvenient. The system does not waste punishment. It uses it. You start to feel it shaping you. You suppress reactions before they form. You learn to feel guilt before you've done anything wrong. This guilt keeps you aligned. It keeps you obedient. You notice that children disappear into training early, not education, conditioning. They are taught how to endure discomfort without complaint, how to kneel without shifting, how to speak words they don't understand with perfect accuracy. Failure isn't punished immediately. It's recorded. That's the most frightening part. Everything is recorded somewhere, not on paper, in memory, in hierarchy, in who is allowed closer to the center and who is kept at the edges. By the end of your childhood, you've seen enough to know that these rituals are not about the gods. They're about control. They exist to identify weakness, assign blame, and keep everyone afraid of becoming next. You don't rebel. Children who rebel don't last long enough to grow up. Instead, you adapt. You tell yourself, this is normal. That every place has its customs. That cruelty must have a purpose if it's lasted this long. These thoughts help you sleep. But deep down, something settles into you. A quiet understanding that your life is no longer fully your own. That one mistake, one misstep, one wrong moment could place you at the center of the next ritual. And once that happens, no one will save you. Because the system doesn't need monsters. It turns people into them. No, you don't become part of the cruelty suddenly. That would be too obvious, too easy to reject. Instead, it seeps into you through responsibility, through trust, through the quiet moment when someone decides you are old enough to be useful. It starts with observation. You are told to stand near the edge of certain gatherings, not participating, just watching. Your presence is explained as educational, so you understand how balance is maintained. No one explains what happens when balance fails. You already know. You begin to notice that the rituals no longer target outsiders. They target insiders, people who belong, but not perfectly. Someone whose family has lost favor. Someone whose behavior has become unpredictable. Someone who asks questions too often, or worse, too clearly. One night, you are summoned to a gathering that feels different. The air is heavier. People avoid each other's eyes. In the center of the space stands a woman you recognize. She helped raise you. She once slipped you extra food when supplies were tight. She looks calm, which is unsettling. The accusation is vague. Disruption. Spiritual imbalance. No one lists crimes. Crimes would require proof. Proof would invite debate. Debate would weaken authority. Instead, the ritual proceeds as if guilt is already settled. You are told to hold a bowl. Inside it is water, mixed with ash and something bitter smelling. Your hands shake. Someone notices and gently adjusts your grip, not to comfort you, to ensure you don't spill. Words are spoken, not shouted, not dramatic. They describe purification, correction, restoration. But the woman in the center begins to tremble. You realize then that the ritual is not meant to cleanse her. It is meant to mark her. She is forced to kneel for hours, not violently, methodically. When she collapses, she is lifted and placed back into position. The chant never stops. The cruelty is not in the pain itself. It is in the duration, in the refusal to acknowledge her humanity. When it ends, she is alive. Again, that is deliberate. Death would free her from responsibility. Instead, she is assigned penance. Endless, undefined penance. She will clean ritual spaces no one uses. She will live on reduced rations. She will sleep apart from others for safety. Her punishment doesn't end with her. Her family feels it immediately. Fewer resources, less protection. Doors that once opened now stay closed. You watch as people distance themselves, not out of hatred, but out of fear of contamination. Association itself has become dangerous. This is how the system teaches you. Cruelty here is not explosive. It is contagious. Soon after, you are asked to participate more directly. Not in punishment, but in preparation. You help select objects. You help organize sequences. You help ensure that everything is ready so that nothing goes wrong. That phrase follows you everywhere. You realize that the rituals require victims. Not randomly, but regularly. Without punishment, the system weakens. Fear must be refreshed. Obedience must be reinforced. Someone always pays the price so everyone else can feel safe. One day, you are asked to observe a child, younger than you were when you first learned to stay silent. The child made repeated mistakes during training, small ones, hesitations, inconsistencies, nothing dangerous on its own. But patterns matter more than incidents. The decision is made quietly. The child will not advance. They will be reassigned. Their future collapses in a sentence spoken without emotion. You see their confusion when they are told. They don't understand what they did wrong. That is the point. Understanding would suggest fairness. The cruelty here is not pain. It is uncertainty. It is teaching people to blame themselves for outcomes they cannot control. You feel it working on you. You begin to preemptively punish yourself. You rehearse words before speaking. You hold back thoughts before they form. You accept discomfort as normal, even necessary. This internal discipline makes you valuable, reliable, safe. But it also erodes something. You stop trusting your instincts. You stop believing that intentions matter. Only outcomes matter here. Only appearances. Only compliance. The rituals escalate slowly. Public humiliation disguised as correction. Isolation framed as purification. Forced silence described as spiritual focus. Every act of cruelty is wrapped in language that makes resistance sound immoral. And the worst part is that you are no longer just a witness. You help make it happen. You tell yourself you don't have a choice. That refusing would only create another victim. That survival requires compromise. These thoughts feel reasonable. That's how you know the system is working. By the end of this phase, cruelty has become procedural, scheduled, expected. It no longer shocks you when someone is selected. You feel relief when it's not you. That relief is the final lesson. The system doesn't need you to believe in it. It only needs you to fear becoming next. Not. By the time you reach this stage, the rituals no longer feel distant or abstract. They are woven into your daily responsibilities, embedded so deeply that separating cruelty from routine becomes almost impossible. What once disturbed you now arrives with a checklist. You are no longer invited merely to observe. You are assigned roles, small ones at first, counting, recording, ensuring sequences are followed precisely. These tasks are framed as safeguards, measures to prevent mistakes. But you begin to understand their real purpose. Precision limits mercy. When everything is procedural, no one has to decide whether something is right or wrong. You witness how punishment is now calibrated, not improvised. The system has learned. Public suffering creates sympathy. Sympathy creates doubt. So cruelty becomes quieter, more controlled, more deniable. One morning, a man fails a purification sequence. He stumbles just slightly during a chant he has performed for years. The error is minor. You expect correction. Instead, the ritual pauses, not to address the mistake, but to note it. You see someone mark a symbol on a slate. Nothing else happens. For days, the man continues his duties as usual. People speak to him. Work continues. Then gradually, tasks are reassigned. He is no longer placed near important moments. His food portions change. His sleeping area moves farther from the center. When he finally asks why, he is told the same phrase everyone hears. The balance has shifted. There is no appeal. Appeals would imply fairness. You begin to recognize the most vicious aspect of the system. It does not punish mistakes. It punishes potential instability. The goal is not justice. It is predictability. Anyone who introduces uncertainty through hesitation, emotion, or independent thought becomes a liability. You are taught how to identify these liabilities. It starts subtly. You are asked to report patterns, not behavior. Patterns. Who lingers too long before speaking? Who avoids eye contact during rituals? Who asks clarifying questions instead of following instructions? You are told this information helps protect the community, and you believe it, at least at first. Then you see what happens next. One of the names you mention disappears from training rotations. Another is reassigned to labor meant to exhaust rather than teach. A third is isolated under the justification of spiritual recalibration. You realize that your observations have consequences. Not immediately, not directly, but inevitably. This is where the cruelty deepens. No one tells you that you are accusing anyone. No one calls you a judge. You are simply contributing to awareness. Responsibility dissolves into process. You can tell yourself you didn't decide anything. You only provided information. That excuse becomes comfortable. Too comfortable. You watch a young woman break under this pressure. She is diligent, obedient, but fear makes her inconsistent. Her voice trembles during recitations. Her hands shake during preparation. These are not crimes, but they are noted. Patterns form. She is selected for corrective ritual. This time, you are close enough to see her eyes. Not panic, not anger, shame. She believes she deserves what is happening. That belief is the system's greatest success. The ritual does not harm her body permanently. That is intentional. Instead, it strips her status. She is reassigned to menial tasks far from visibility. She is forbidden from speaking during gatherings. Her existence is reduced to function. You understand, then, that this is not about punishment. It is about example. Everyone watches. Everyone learns. Fear spreads efficiently without a single threat being spoken aloud. You feel the change in yourself. You begin filtering people instinctively, noticing weaknesses, adjusting how close you stand to certain individuals. Distance becomes a survival skill. Association is dangerous. Compassion is risky. The rituals now serve a secondary purpose. They turn everyone into enforcers. No guards are needed. No violence is required. People enforce the system on themselves and on each other because the alternative is becoming visible for the wrong reason. At some point, you catch yourself thinking the unthinkable. Someone else should be chosen next. Not out of malice, out of relief. You recognize the thought immediately and feel disgusted. But it doesn't leave. It lingers. It makes sense. That's when you realize how deep the cruelty runs. It doesn't just hurt victims, it reshapes witnesses. You begin to see how the system feeds on participation. Every small act, every note taken, every report given, every silence maintained, keeps it alive. And by now, you are indispensable, reliable, trusted. That trust feels like protection. It is also a trap. You are invited closer to the center, not as an honor, but as insurance. The closer you are, the more complicit you become. Leaving now would be noticed. Questioning now would be dangerous. You tell yourself you're just surviving, that you don't enjoy this, that you're not responsible. But deep down, you understand something that can't be undone. The cruelty no longer needs belief. It doesn't even need fear. It runs on habit, and you have become part of it. By now, the cruelty no longer needs a stage. It has moved fully into administration, into schedules, assignments, evaluations. What used to feel like ritual now feels like policy, and that is far more dangerous. You are trusted with oversight, not authority. Oversight. The difference matters. Authority can be blamed. Oversight dissolves blame. You are asked to ensure that procedures are followed, that sequences remain uninterrupted, that corrections are applied consistently. Consistency is the word everyone uses. Consistency keeps things stable. Consistency keeps people safe. You learn what inconsistency costs. A man refuses to participate in a corrective ritual. Not loudly, not dramatically. He simply stops responding. He stands still, eyes down, body rigid. He does not chant. He does not resist. He just withholds. The room freezes. No one touches him. Physical force would turn him into a victim. Victims invite sympathy. Instead, the response is procedural. His name is removed from rosters. His access to shared resources is revoked. His living space is reassigned. He is not expelled. He is neutralized. Over the following weeks, you watch him shrink. Hunger dulls his movements. Isolation hollows his voice. People avoid him, not out of cruelty, but out of calculation. Association risks contamination. Eventually, he leaves on his own. You are told the system worked. Balance was restored. You understand then that cruelty here is optimized. It wastes nothing. Soon after, you are involved in something worse. A ritual designed not to punish, but to prevent. A group of children are evaluated, not for behavior, but for potential, inconsistency, emotional volatility, independent curiosity. These traits are recorded carefully. One child is flagged. The ritual that follows is quiet and irreversible. The child is reassigned permanently to labor far from training centers. No advancement, no instruction, no explanation. Their future collapses before it begins. You watch them nod obediently, not understanding what they have lost. That ignorance is intentional. Hope would only cause pain. This is where the system shows its true face. It does not wait for failure. It eliminates risk. You feel something twist inside you, but you suppress it. Suppression is a skill now. You remind yourself that this is necessary, that unchecked individuals destabilize communities, that the rituals protect the many at the expense of the few. That logic becomes easier to accept when you realize the few are never chosen randomly. They are chosen carefully. People with fewer allies, weaker families, less protection. The system avoids conflict by targeting those who cannot fight back. Cruelty is efficient when it is selective. You begin to see how authority hides behind ritual language. Words like purification, alignment, and correction are used to justify acts that would otherwise be indefensible. Language matters here. It reframes harm as duty. One night, a woman collapses during a prolonged corrective sequence. She is not allowed to rest. Rest would suggest mercy. The chant continues. Her breathing becomes shallow. When she finally loses consciousness, the ritual ends. Not out of concern, but because the objective has been met. She is carried away. You later learn she survived. Survival is not kindness, it is leverage. She returns weeks later, altered, quieter, compliant, stripped of influence. The message is unmistakable. Resistance is not met with death. It is met with reduction. You can live here, but only as less. The cruelty now has witnesses, and those witnesses have learned the lesson. You feel it ripple outward. People correct themselves faster. Questions vanish entirely. Even hesitation disappears. The system has achieved something close to perfection, and you are rewarded for your role in this. You are given access, information, proximity. Not because you are trusted morally, but because you are predictable. Predictability is the highest virtue here. You have proven that you will follow process over empathy, that you will prioritize order over people. That realization terrifies you, but not enough to stop. By this point, cruelty no longer shocks you. It organizes you. It gives you a framework to understand the world. People are no longer individuals. They are variables, inputs, risks to be managed. You recognize how far you've come when you notice yourself thinking this way automatically. That's the final transformation. The rituals no longer exist to enforce cruelty. They exist to make cruelty feel normal. And as long as it feels normal, it will never stop. At this point, the cruelty no longer announces itself through rituals alone. It has embedded itself into relationships, into memory, into the way people look at one another when they think no one else is watching. You begin to notice how fear has reorganized social life. Friendships are shallow. Trust is transactional. People measure their words not by truth, but by safety. Everyone knows everyone else is listening, even when no one is assigned to listen. The system has succeeded in turning proximity into risk. You are asked to mentor someone new, younger, eager, careful in the way only the inexperienced can be. You recognize yourself in them years ago, before you understood the full cost of belonging. They ask you questions quietly, respectfully, not challenges, clarifications. You answer just enough to guide them away from danger. You tell yourself you are protecting them. Then they make a mistake. It's small, barely noticeable. A hesitation during a corrective sequence. A pause before repeating a phrase. You see it instantly. Others do too. No one reacts. Reactions come later. That night, you are summoned. You are asked a simple question. Did you observe irregularity? The question is neutral. It carries no accusation. It doesn't need to. Your answer will decide whether the system tightens or loosens its grip. You hesitate. That hesitation is noticed. You correct yourself immediately and answer yes. The next day, the younger one is reassigned. No explanation given. They look at you when the order is read, searching your face for something. Comfort, understanding, denial. You give them nothing. Giving them anything would expose you. This is when you understand the most vicious function of the rituals. They don't just punish disobedience, they weaponize loyalty. You are forced to choose again and again between protecting yourself and protecting others. The system ensures that choosing others always carries personal risk, while choosing yourself feels rational, necessary, inevitable. You watch as people slowly betray one another without ever admitting it. Reports framed as observations, silence framed as neutrality, withdrawal framed as wisdom. The language makes it easy, too easy. You begin to carry the weight of these decisions in your body. Sleep becomes shallow. Dreams repeat familiar scenes with different faces. You wake before dawn, heart racing, already bracing for the day. The rituals no longer need to be violent. They have moved inside you. One evening, something breaks. An older participant, respected, careful, long-serving, refuses a corrective directive. Not by resisting, by speaking. They question the necessity of the action. Calmly, precisely, using the system's own language. For a moment, the room holds its breath. This is unprecedented. Questioning framed as loyalty, not defiance. The response is immediate and devastating. The ritual does not proceed. That alone is alarming. Instead, a new process is initiated. A review. The person's history is examined. Every past hesitation reinterpreted. Every minor deviation reframed as a pattern. Evidence is manufactured through memory. You are asked to contribute. You do. You tell yourself it's only factual, that you're not inventing anything, that the system is already moving and you're just staying out of its way. The words leave your mouth smoothly, too smoothly. The punishment is absolute. The older participant is not exiled. Exile would allow escape. Instead, they are stripped of responsibility and reassigned to endless, meaningless labor. They are forbidden from speaking during gatherings, forbidden from teaching, forbidden from influence. You see them weeks later. They look smaller, not physically, psychologically, reduced. The cruelty has done its work. And something in you fractures quietly, not enough to rebel, enough to understand. You realize now that the rituals are not designed to identify threats. They are designed to create them. Anyone who demonstrates independent judgment becomes dangerous by definition. The system cannot tolerate alternatives. Even loyal ones, This knowledge isolates you more effectively than any punishment ever could. You stop sharing doubts entirely. You stop imagining change. You focus on execution, on survival, on maintaining your position long enough to avoid becoming useful in the wrong way. This is the stage where hope dies. Not dramatically, not all at once. It erodes through compromise, through justifications, through the belief that endurance equals virtue, that suffering has meaning if it keeps you alive. You tell yourself that leaving is impossible, that staying is safer, that you've gone too far to turn back. All of these thoughts are true. That's why they're so effective. By the end of this phase, you are no longer afraid of punishment. You are afraid of being honest. And that fear keeps the system alive more reliably than any ritual ever could. By now, the cruelty no longer needs new victims to stay effective. The memory of what has already happened is enough. The system runs on anticipation, on what people expect will happen if they step out of line. You notice how people begin to discipline themselves before anyone else has to. A glance is corrected mid-movement. A sentence is abandoned halfway through. A thought is swallowed before it reaches the mouth. The rituals have done their job. Fear has become internal. You are given more responsibility, but less clarity. Decisions arrive without explanation. Orders come stripped of context. This is intentional. Context creates understanding. Understanding creates judgment. Judgment creates resistance. You carry out instructions anyway. One day, a corrective ritual is announced without a named subject. That alone sends tension through the community. Anonymous punishment is the most effective kind. Anyone could be chosen. Everyone adjusts their behavior immediately. When the subject is finally revealed, it's someone unexpected, someone compliant, someone careful, someone who followed the rules. That's the point. The accusation is not about disobedience. It's about imbalance, emotional distance, lack of spiritual alignment, vague enough to apply to anyone, impossible to disprove. The ritual is severe but controlled. No blood, no spectacle, just prolonged deprivation, isolation, repetition. The person emerges days later hollowed out, obedient in a way that looks unnatural. You feel relief that it wasn't you, then guilt for feeling relief, then nothing at all. That numbness scares you more than fear ever did. You begin to understand the final layer of cruelty. The system doesn't just punish mistakes. It punishes the idea that safety is earned. No one is ever safe. Safety would reduce vigilance. Vigilance is what keeps the structure intact. You start measuring time differently, not in days or seasons, but in how long it's been since the last correction. Long gaps make people anxious. Short gaps keep everyone sharp. The rituals are adjusted accordingly. Someone confides in you one night, quietly, desperately. They ask if you think the system has gone too far. The question is not loud, it's not defiant, it's human. Your response determines their future. You tell them to be careful, that's all. A warning disguised as advice. You do not report them. You also do not protect them. This middle ground feels safer. It isn't. Weeks later, they are selected. Not for what they said, but for what they might say next. Potential is enough. You understand now that silence is not protection. It is delay. You feel the weight of accumulated choices pressing down on you. Not dramatic regret, just constant tension. a sense that you are standing on ground that could give way at any moment. Leaving crosses your mind more often now, not as a plan, as a fantasy. You imagine distance, anonymity, a life where words don't need to be filtered. But the system has anticipated this too. Those who leave are marked, those who remain are warned. Escape is framed as betrayal. You stay, you rationalize it. You tell yourself that enduring is a form of resistance, that surviving keeps options open, that if you last long enough, maybe things will change. Deep down, you know better. Change would require memory, and memory is what the system erases best. You look around and realize that the rituals have achieved their ultimate goal. People no longer remember how life felt before them. There is no baseline to compare against. Cruelty doesn't feel cruel when it's the only reality you've known. You are still alive, still functioning, still respected. But something essential is gone. Not freedom. That disappeared long ago. Choice. And without choice, cruelty no longer needs to be enforced. It simply exists. By the time you reach this stage, cruelty no longer feels imposed. It feels inherited, passed down through habit, language, and expectation. The rituals still exist, but they no longer need to be frequent. Their memory does the work for them. You begin to notice something unsettling. New participants adapt faster than you ever did. They hesitate less. They question less. They learn the rules almost instinctively. The system has refined itself. It no longer needs to break people slowly. It selects those already shaped to fit. You watch them and realize that what once horrified you now barely registers. A reassignment, an isolation order, a correction announced in neutral tones. You process these events the way you process weather, unfortunate but inevitable. That realization lands hard. You are not desensitized. You are aligned. The rituals now focus on maintenance rather than enforcement. Minor corrections, symbolic gestures, reminders that authority is still present, still watching, still capable. The fear doesn't spike anymore. It hums, constant, reliable. One day you are asked to help design a new sequence, not to carry it out, to design it. The purpose is preventative. Reduce instability, increase compliance. You sit quietly listening as others discuss timing, duration, and impact as if they are adjusting machinery. You contribute, not enthusiastically, not reluctantly, practically. That's when you understand the deepest cruelty of all. The system no longer needs victims to prove its power. It has turned survivors into architects. You tell yourself this is just structure, that every society needs rules, that control prevents chaos. These arguments sound reasonable. That's what makes them dangerous. You start noticing how language has shifted. Words like harm and suffering are replaced with optimization and correction. People are no longer punished. They are adjusted, reduced, reallocated. This language makes everything cleaner. It removes moral weight. It allows cruelty to function without friction. You encounter someone new, older, transferred from another region. They have not fully absorbed the system yet. They still ask why, still pause before complying, still believe intent matters. They are careful, but not careful enough. You see what's coming long before they do. You could warn them. You could guide them quietly, like someone once tried to guide you. But doing so would mark you both. Association is still dangerous. You say nothing. When they are selected weeks later, the process unfolds smoothly. Too smoothly. No resistance. no disruption. The system absorbs them without effort. Others barely react. That's when you realize the cruelty has reached its most efficient form. It no longer shocks. It no longer warns. It no longer needs justification. It simply removes what doesn't fit. You feel something close to grief, but there is no space for it. Grief would imply loss. Loss would imply something valuable was taken. The system does not acknowledge value, only function. You begin to understand that what you miss is not freedom or safety. It's unpredictability, the ability to act without calculating consequences, the permission to be wrong. Those concepts feel distant now, almost fictional. You look at yourself and recognize the transformation. You are composed, respected, trusted. You have survived every stage. By every metric that matters here, you have succeeded. And yet, if you were removed tomorrow, the system would continue unchanged. That thought follows you everywhere. You realize then that the rituals were never the core of the cruelty. They were the training ground. The real cruelty is continuity, the way harm outlives its originators, the way people like you carry it forward without needing to be told. The system doesn't fear rebellion anymore. It has outgrown it, and as you stand there, fully integrated, fully functional, you understand the final truth you were never meant to see clearly. The most effective cruelty is the kind that convinces you there is no alternative. By the end, there is no dramatic collapse, no uprising, no reckoning. The system does not fall because it no longer needs to stand. You wake before dawn out of habit, not obligation. The rituals still happen, but they feel distant, almost ceremonial. Their purpose has already been fulfilled. They taught everyone how to live without being told what to do. You notice that authority figures speak less now. They don't need to explain. Compliance arrives automatically. People adjust themselves the moment something feels even slightly out of alignment. The fear of correction is enough. The memory of punishment does the rest. You look around and realize something unsettling. The cruelty has thinned out, not because it's gone, but because it's been perfected. There are fewer public corrections, fewer visible victims. The system has learned that visible harm invites questions. Invisible harm lasts longer. People who don't fit simply fade. They leave quietly. They withdraw. They become irrelevant. Sometimes they disappear entirely, but no one marks the moment. Disappearance is treated as a personal failure, not a collective act. That reframing is crucial. It keeps guilt individualized and the system clean. You try to remember when you last felt shocked by something. You can't. That absence of reaction feels like proof of maturity, growth, adaptation. You tell yourself this is what survival looks like. You tell yourself that resisting would only create more harm, that endurance is a form of wisdom. These thoughts come easily now, too easily. You realize that the rituals no longer define the boundaries of cruelty. You do. So does everyone else who has learned when to stay silent, when to report, when to look away. The system outsourced enforcement long ago. It lives in habits, not ceremonies. One evening, you overhear younger participants discussing a past correction. They talk about it with detachment, as a lesson, as a necessary step. You hear your own language in their mouths, the phrasing, the justifications, the calm. That's when the weight of it finally lands. The rituals didn't just control behavior. They trained successors. You understand now that nothing you've endured will end with you. The system is self-renewing. It feeds on memory selectively, retaining fear, discarding empathy. It doesn't need belief in gods or magic. It only needs continuity. You think about leaving again, not as fantasy this time, but as a possibility. You imagine distance, a place where names don't carry histories, where silence doesn't mean danger. The thought feels unreal, like imagining a colour you've never seen. Even if you left, the system would remain. Even if you spoke, no one would listen. Not because they don't care, but because caring is dangerous. You've seen what happens to those who ask for alternatives. You helped make it happen. This is the final cruelty. Not the punishments, not the rituals, not even the fear. It's the understanding that the system doesn't need to hurt you anymore. You are already shaped. You live your life carefully. You choose words that won't echo. You avoid questions that lead nowhere safe. You pass on what you've learned, not as doctrine, but as caution. You teach others how not to stand out, how to last. From the outside, it looks like peace. From the inside, it feels like absence. The rituals still exist in name, but their true legacy is quieter. It's the way people monitor themselves, the way cruelty no longer needs justification, the way harm is explained as balance and balance as survival. You realize then that the darkest part of the system was never the rituals themselves. It was what they made permanent. They taught people how to live without choice, how to harm without hatred, how to obey without being commanded. And long after the chants fade and the symbols erode, that lesson remains. That is how the cruelty survives. Nud.